to command a demon to get this woman I fancy into bed. The necromancers are interested in using the formulae of exorcism to command demons to do other things that they are interested in. You know, a demon could make me rich. A demon could find some hidden treasure for me.
Fear that necromancers and witches are all around, conjuring up demons and making pacts with the devil, sweeps across Europe. One of the first cases investigated by the Inquisition is in the Irish city of Kilkenny. In 1324, in a dispute over inheritance, one of the richest women in the town, Dame Alice Catala, is accused of witchcraft, heresy, and of having a demon lover called Robin.
Alice Catala, a landowner in Kilkenny who had several husbands, so her stepchildren brought a charge against her that she'd poisoned her previous husbands in order to obtain the land, and she'd poisoned or killed them otherwise through witchcraft.
Alice manages to escape to England. Her unfortunate servant, Petronella, is tortured and burned at the stake. The campaign against necromancers, sorcerers, and witches lasts 300 years and kills between 60,000 and 300,000 people. The vast majority of the victims are women.
Women were thought of as being more prone to the devil, more likely to sin, more likely to be led astray. They were also thought to be less intellectual than men.
Women were seen as closer to animals. And part of this was that they were more susceptible to temptation, that they were more easily seduced by material gratification.
As the Inquisition goes about its grisly business, rounding up suspects and interrogating them, many clerics and lay people worry that it's all guesswork. Perhaps they're missing even more witches than they're finding. But how can you tell who is one of Satan's helpers? What you need is a standard test. In 1486, two German Dominican monks publish a textbook for inquisitors called Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. The book contains a clever catch-22. Not only is witchcraft heresy, not believing in witches is heresy as well.
The Malleus Maleficarum was the manual, the how to get rid of all these demonic fleas that had infested a human being.
It was a book of what witches were, what witches did.
Malleus Maleficarum tells the Inquisitor everything he needs to know. Witches have the mark of Satan on their bodies, a birthmark or a wart. They can fly by rubbing magical herbs on their skin, and they gather at Satan-worshipping ceremonies called Sabbaths. At these, they celebrate a twisted version of the Christian Mass, kissing the devil's rear end in a blasphemous act of homage.
Certainly there was a fear at that time, which was why Malleus Maleficarum sold so many copies and ran through so many editions and is still in print.
30 years after Malleus Maleficarum was written, Martin Luther leads the Protestant Reformation, splitting the Christian Church in two. Each faction, Protestant and Catholic, claims the other is in league with the evil one. Both sides use Malleus Maleficarum to find Satanists, and not just in order to destroy them. Witch hunting is a kind of scientific quest. The idea is, if you can understand witches and the devil, you can fight them.
The whole business of witch hunting is almost a sort of intellectual research project. I need to gather a bit more data about what demons do. So I'm going to interrogate a few more witches to get a bit more data, and then I'm going to write it up in my book. The cutting edge of scientific inquiry.
Right across Europe, hysteria about Satan sweeps Protestant and Catholic countries alike. In Scotland, James VI, one of the best educated kings in Europe, is so caught up in the craze, he writes a book about the devil and witchcraft. Called Demonology, James' book sets out to prove that Satan-worshipping witches are everywhere, and that they are the gravest threat to the security of the state.
He surrounded himself with advisors, and mainly religious advisors, who would protect him from the demons that he feared so much. He saw it everywhere.
Well, James was certainly quite militant about this. He thought he was fighting a war.
Even as James leads the fight against the devil and the forces of evil, the devil is helping James to keep his crown. James can always point to the figure of Satan and say, if it weren't for me, look who would be ruling in my place.
Although this is quite frightening, it's also in a way quite gratifying for James. One of the witches who was interrogated was asked, why is the devil attacking our king? And the witch who was confessing allegedly answered, this was what was recorded anyway in her confession, the devil is doing this because King James is the greatest enemy that the devil has in the world.
When the New World of the Americas is colonized by Europeans, the devil travels with them. The Puritan colonists who arrived from England in the late 1600s are strong believers in the power of Satan. They're convinced that everyone who isn't a Puritan is controlled by the devil, and that women are especially susceptible to Satan's powers.
They had established what might be called Puritan communities, and were looking to build a great example for the rest of Christendom.
If you were enjoying yourself, or if a group of you were singing or dancing or having a drink, then those who were opposed to that kind of fun were quite certain that Satan was filling the glasses for you.
In 1688 in Boston, an Irish laundrywoman called Mary Glover is accused of bewitching the children of one of her customers. Proof of her pact with the devil includes several rag dolls found in her house.
Mary Glover was Irish and a servant. Her first language was Gaelic, and one of the tests to prove that you weren't a witch was to speak the Lord's Prayer. The linguistic difficulties meant that she couldn't speak the Lord's Prayer without, as they saw it, blaspheming. She was hanged as a witch in 1688.
Three years after Mary Glover is hanged, less than 20 miles away at Salem, Massachusetts, the testimony of 3 young girls leads to a mass execution.
Some of the children were said to be possessed by spirits sent from the witches. And so when they were standing witness, they were performing being possessed.
In the Salem witch hunt, 150 people are arrested. 19 men and women are hung or crushed to death. 17 others die in prison. In an ironic twist to the story, the Salem jury later apologized, blaming the devil for their mistake. By the 1700s, the witch craze in America and Europe is almost over. A new, more scientific view of the world is gaining ground.
Modernism, as the project that we get from the 18th century Enlightenment, actually banished religion, superstition, and all of that, and just said that that belongs to the Dark Ages. We're now in the modern world. We believe in facts, we believe in science, and if you want to be religious, that's a private option which you can go and practice somewhere else.
Although the witch hunts have ended, and the educated classes of Europe and America even start to question whether the devil exists, in the folk tales of ordinary people, Satan lives on. But he's very different from the formidable and terrifying devil of the witch-finders.
One of my own favourites is that of Dunstan, who was a very powerful blacksmith. The devil arrives and asks to have his shoes replaced.
And he simply gets hold of his nose with two red-hot tongs and throws him out. And that is a very, very different devil. That's a devil that you can put in his place.
By now, the devil has shed some of his ugliness and crude habits. In fact, he's often a member of the decadent aristocracy. He's a handsome gentleman dressed in fine clothes and mixing in fashionable company. Like Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, and the Satan of the ancient Gnostic heresies, this Satan controls the material world of wealth, power, and sex. He can give all these things to you if you promise him your soul. The most famous of all devil folk tales is the story of Faust. The devil, in the form of the clever and devious Mephistopheles, offers to grant Faust all his wishes. But there's a price.
One of the things that many necromancers or people using necromantic spells are interested in is how to get women into bed. Faust is very interested in that, and he gets all kinds of women, including Helen of Troy.
Faust's bargain with the devil ends in disaster for Faust. Mephistopheles calls in his debt, and Faust dies horribly. The devil takes him away to spend eternity in hell. As the power of religion fades, and the age of popes and kings gives way to the age of revolution and democracy, a new devil arrives on the scene. This devil is utterly different from the treacherous fiend of Christian tradition. He is a tragic and lonely figure, a hero battling against tyrannical authority in the shape of a cruel and overbearing god. Satan is now a brave and handsome rebel.
And so you get the kind of romantic view of Satan as not really a villain or an evil person at all, but the opposite of that. Satan is a good guy who's challenging the boss.
In the age of Romanticism, we find the poets, particularly like Byron, creating a Byronic hero who is somehow dark and sinister and has a past. And so, far from being something to shun and something to fear, the devil is admired